They can have the best operations, they can have the best financial part, the best P&Ls, but if they don't have sales coming in, none of that matters. None of it matters because nobody can be paid.
Look into his eyes. They're the eyes of a man obsessed by
success.
Eyes that mock our sacred institutions. Bedroom eyes, they call them in a bygone day.
Sex desire is the most powerful of human desires. When driven by this desire, men develop keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability unknown to them at other times. So strong and impelling is the desire for sexual contact that men freely run the risk of life and reputation to indulge in. When harnessed and redirected along other lines, this motivating force maintains all of its attributes of keenness of imagination, courage, etc., which may be used as powerful creative forces in literature, art, or in any other profession or calling, including, of course, the accumulation of riches. Napoleon Hill.
Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I am super glad that you're here with us today because I am here with my most amazing guest, Jeremy Miner. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Michelle, thank you so much for calling me amazing. I'm sure you say that to all of your guests, that they're amazing, but I'll take that as a compliment.
I say that to all the boys, but you're still special.
Okay.
Awesome. So give us a 5,000 foot view of who you are and what you love to do.
Yeah, so I'm the chairman and founder of a global sales training company called Seventh Level, and we train companies all the way from, we have even a Fortune 100 client, all the way down to Fortune 500, all the way to SMB, all the way to individual salespeople and coaches that sell anything. We teach them how to communicate and use the right, how do I say, the right questioning, the right skills, the right tonality that actually work with human behavior to get drastically much better results than what they are accustomed to, no matter where they're at. So that's what we do in like a 5 or a 10,000 view right there. We train people how to sell more of their products and services in a way where they actually feel comfortable and they actually get results.
Nice. Love that. Because it's way better to perform when you feel comfortable. We all know that. So tell me, how did you get into sales in particular in all of this?
How did I get into sales? So I got into sales about 21 years ago as a broke, burned out college student. Okay. I got my first job selling home security systems door to door. The sales manager basically, they hire everybody because it's straight commission. So if you don't sell, you're out the door a couple weeks later, and about 80% quit within the first 2 weeks. And basically they took us out in a van, dropped us off in a neighborhood, and basically said, go make some sales. We'll pick you up after dark. I mean, that was my experience, right? Had to memorize the script. They said, be excited when you knock on the door, that if you tell them how excited you are, like, and how much belief you have in the product, they're going to believe you and they're going to want to buy. And I quickly found out that nothing could be further from the truth. Okay. Because every single door they were saying, we don't need it. Your price is too high. We don't have enough money. I need to talk to my spouse. We're not interested. You've already had somebody around before. We're looking at other companies. Can you call me back a week, a month, a year later? And I figured out very, very quickly that those type of selling skills were not going to work very well. And I remember, even, I think I was telling you this on one of your shows that you had me on, is that after about 7 or 8 weeks of all of that rejection, hardly making any sales, I remember there was one night in particular that really everything changed for me. It was a start of something great. And I remember like sitting on the curb, the sales manager is going to pick me up that night. And I remember like my back and my chest were completely soaked with sweat. You're talking Midwest heat, humidity in the middle of July, right? If you can only imagine this little kid, 22-year-old kid out there. And basically my legs were like broken. They were exhausted from going door to door for 12 hours. I'd made 0 sales that day. So imagine working 12 hours. You make 0 sales, you make $0. That week I'd worked 60 hours. I made 0 sales. So that meant I made $0. I could have made more at McDonald's serving hamburgers. Okay. And I sat down on that curve and I was sitting there and I felt like, I just gotten married at that time. had a kid on the way. Like, how was I going to go home and basically say, hey, we don't have enough money to pay the rent. We're going to have to move in with your parents, like in the basement. I was going to be one of those guys. And I thought to myself, like, maybe selling just wasn't for me. Has anybody ever felt that themselves listening to this? And I remember the manager picked me up and he popped in this Tony Robbins CD. So this was 20 years ago, everybody. So they listened to CDs back in the day. Okay. And so they popped in this Tony Robbins CD, and he said a bunch of stuff, but one thing stood out. He said, and I might be butchering it, but he said something to the fact that most people fail for the simple reason they don't learn the right skills that are necessary to succeed. They don't learn the right skills. Now, he actually goes on to say everybody's really taught skills, but the people who fail are the ones who are not taught the right ones. And I'm like, something like went off in my head that maybe what the company was training me, maybe what I was learning from these books, the old sales gurus, as I call them now, maybe they just weren't the right skills. Maybe they just didn't work that well anymore. Because I never thought that could even be a possibility in my mind. And that really took me down the road of behavioral science and human psychology and learning, because I was going to college at the same time. My degree was in behavioral science, of all things, luckily for me. And I'm like, my professors were telling me the most persuasive way to communicate was here. The sales gurus were telling me it was here, like complete opposites. So I'm like, how do I take human behavior, behavioral science, and integrate that into the sales process? Okay. And when I started doing that, everything changed for me. Okay. Within 1 year, I was the number one salesperson in that company out of about 3,000. Within 2 years, I was the number one salesperson in the country out of like, I don't even know, 50,000 salespeople selling the same thing. And it wasn't because I was just out working people or I had the great leads or anything like that. It's just, I started to learn how to use human behavior to my advantage, where my prospects were pulling me in and wanting to open it up, like wanting to go below the surface, wanting to engage instead of pushing where they were just pushing back. And when you learn that type of skill, I know that's just a basic overview, but when you learn how to get your prospects to pull you in and actually want to engage with you and go below the surface, selling becomes really, really easy and really, really profitable for you and your company. And most importantly, it helps your prospects really solve their problems and get what they want. That's the main thing. You with me?
Absolutely, I am. I love it. So, and I feel for almost every kid that did, corner sales. I used to sell big, huge, fat cookbooks on the corner of downtown Ottawa. And I was like, this is the stupidest thing. No, I don't want to carry these. Who the hell wants to carry a 20-pound book home from work after an exhausted day?
I remember I would knock on some doors. And I still remember, like, this is after a couple of years, that I had gotten really, really good and stuff when I learned the right skills. And I remember a few people like, oh, you poor salesman. I wasn't thinking that. I was making $100,000 a month in commissions. I was 23, making $100,000 a month in commissions. And I'd be like, oh, it's okay. And I would definitely soak it up, but little did they know. But once you learn the right skills, it doesn't matter what you sell. You can sell door to door, you can sell B2C, you can sell B2B. It all translates once you understand human behavior.
Nice. I love it. So talk to me about who you love to work with. Who takes this information, just sucks it in and makes the most of it? Because I'm sure that's your favorite client.
Well, we train every industry on planet Earth. So Forbes says, because I never even knew this, but Forbes says there's 158 different industries now in the world. Now there's subcategories of each industry, right? We are literally at this point in every single industry there is. We just brought on a seatbelt manufacturer in Berlin who sells seatbelts to Land Rover and BMW and Porsche and other companies. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Seatbelts have to be sold. Who would have thought? So it doesn't really matter if you have a product or service that solves people's problems and or solves an emotional need. We train exotic car dealerships like Lamborghinis. Lamborghinis don't solve a problem. It's not like, if you want to go to point A to point B, you need to buy a Lamborghini. You can buy a used Toyota, right? But it solves an emotional need, status, right? There's other things it solves emotionally for those type of buyers. So if your product solves problems and or an emotional need, and or probably both, and your solution solves those, then we train those type of people. That's pretty much everybody in the world. We have
Nice.
a large demographic.
Yes. Yes, you do. Awesome. So give us an example of a Cinderella story of one of your clients.
Oh man, there's lots. I'll give you a Cinderella story of like just individual salespeople because I love, I love companies like, like Google AdWords. We trained 4 of their divisions. We got them a 244% uplift increase. For you Canadians that maybe don't use the word uplift, but down here in the States in enterprise, they use uplift, not increase. It's like the technical term. But we got them a 244% increase within 90 days. Now, that's not a sobbing story. They were already doing well. Okay. So let me give you a story of like somebody that was just like on their deathbed, couldn't sell their way out of a wet paper bag. So there's this gentleman, I actually just interviewed him in our Facebook group a couple of weeks ago. He's an immigrant from Brazil. Okay, English is his second language. Like he speaks, mainly Portuguese. Okay, he came over here immigrated a couple of years before COVID, and he was like an assistant to an assistant at like a production company that puts on live events. What happened 2 years ago? COVID. What happened to the live event industry during COVID? Gone. So literally, he gets this job. He's making probably $2,000 a month. Okay. He's like an assistant to the assistant to the assistant, like all the way down here, barely spoke English. He gets waxed from his job within like 3 days of everything shutting down of COVID. And he's like, what am I going to do? Nobody's going to hire him because he can barely speak English. Somehow he convinced somebody to give him a straight commission sales job, which it's not hard to convince somebody to give you a straight commission sales job, because if it doesn't work out, it just doesn't work out. Like he was, basically if you're going door to door, like everybody's hired. If it works out, it works out. But he couldn't sell anything. He made like maybe $1,000 his first month, somehow scraped up enough funds to get in our training, saw one of our ads on YouTube or Facebook or something. The next month he goes from making $1,000 in his commission-based job to making 5. The next month he went from 5 to 9. The next month he went 9 to 15. The next month he went 15 to 21. And now 10 months in, he's averaging over $40,000 a month in commissions, selling the exact same thing he was before. English is his second language. And guess what type of leads he sells to? English speaking leads. So when you learn the right skills, right? When you learn the right questions to ask with the right delivery, the right tonality, really doesn't matter what you sell, doesn't matter the language barrier. You can be very, very successful. So that's a sob story, I guess. We got thousands of those, but that's one that stood out for me because I just interviewed him in about 2 weeks ago in our Facebook group.
Nice. Is there any industry out there that goes, oh, this won't work for me because we're different?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that I would say the number one objection we get is, will it work for what I sell? I sell XYZ product and it has to be sold a certain way. And my prospects would never let me ask them questions. They just want me to tell what the price is. Well, that's the problem. That's your problem, because you're triggering that reaction from what you're saying and or not asking early in the conversation. That's triggering the process. One thing we have to understand, this is just behavioral science 101. Within the first 7 to 12 seconds of any sales conversation you're in, I don't care if it's door to door. I don't care if it's in a boardroom meeting with executives. I don't care if it's on Zoom like now. I don't care if it's an outbound lead, cold calling, doesn't matter. Your prospects are picking up on your verbal and nonverbal cues. Okay. It's just the way our brains work. We cannot help it as a human being. So they're picking up on social cues, your verbal, nonverbal, what you were saying and or asking that triggers their brain to react in one of 2 ways. Now, everybody's heard of fight or flight, but does anybody know how it's triggered? It's not like somebody just goes into fight or flight mode by themselves. It's a triggered reaction. Okay. It has to do with our, what do they call it? The crocodile part of our brain. All right. If you get into human behavior, it's a bunch of scientific stuff. I won't go into that, but I'll give you the layman's terms. Okay. So when we come across in our sales conversations as overly assumptive or aggressive, if we come across needy, and you can tell when the salesperson's needy, right? And you come across attached, it triggers the human brain to go into, like I said, fight or flight mode, where they try to get rid of you very quickly. Or they'll say things like, hey, I don't have time. Just tell me what you have and I'll tell you if I'm interested. Or, hey, I don't have time. Can you just tell me how much it costs just to see if I can afford it? Or, hey, I'm really busy right now. Can you just call me back in a week, a month, a year later? That's a triggered response.
Can you
Okay,
call me
that's
next
not-
century? That'd be great.
Yeah, that's not something they did. That's something you triggered by the way you came across to them. Now, once we learn human behavior, when we come across in that conversation more neutral. Now, what I mean by neutral is more unbiased. We're not quite sure if we can even help you because we don't know anything about the situation. If we come across that we're open to them saying no, or that it's not a good fit, if we come across more detached, okay, and we understand the right questions to ask with the right tone, it triggers their brain to become curious enough, okay, where they actually want to engage. Okay, they want to open up to us because they view us as more of an expert or somebody that can get them where they're wanting to go. So when we really learn how to become detached from the expectations of making the sale, and instead we're really focused on whether or not they have problems we can solve, you're going to notice your prospect will react and treat you much differently than all these other salespeople who they just try to get rid of. Because as soon as a prospect feels you are just there to sell them, or you're asking some type of manipulative question, leading questions where they can only answer the way you want them to, people can tell when you're doing that. I hate to tell you guys, when you do that, all it does is it causes them to emotionally shut down, and they're never going to go below the surface with your questions. You can have the greatest questions in the world, but they're just going to stay surface level with you. And at the end, they're going to say, I need to think about it. I need to keep looking around. I need to keep getting other quotes. I need to keep doing some research. That is a triggered reaction just because you don't understand human behavior yet. Now that can be fixed. You can learn how to not do that, which is the good part.
Which is the whole point of being able to have a conversation with you. So talk to me about, let's back up the bus a bit, because a lot of people understand that the sales conversation is one thing, but getting people into the sales conversation is a whole other gamut. And I see a lot of people doing face plants all over the place, and it hurts. So talk to me about how does somebody approach a prospect without repelling them?
Well, are you talking about like outbound leads that
Like
requested information? You talking cold calling? Or are you talking like an inbound lead who books on your calendar? There's different things you would do.
Absolutely. So let's start with somebody that doesn't have any inbound leads. Somebody that's going out, maybe they're networking, maybe they're cold calling, maybe they're asking existing clients for referrals, whatever.
Because there all would be three different ways you would start that conversation. So I don't want to give one way and then it's not going to work for outbound leads. So let's just talk about cold calling. Okay. So let's say you're listening here, you're a business owner, you have salespeople that are picking up the phones and just getting names and numbers off of LinkedIn or somewhere else. I don't think we have phone books anymore. I know that's what they used to do back in my days when I would cold call. You'd pick a name.
You'd have little strips of paper that just
exactly.
last name, phone number.
Last name, phone number. So basically, okay, I want everybody to think about this. Every phone call you've ever got from a telemarketer or a cold caller, in your mind, how did it typically start? Can I share with everybody? Because we go in and do sales audits of even Fortune 500 companies. And do you know what 99% do? Hi, is John there? Hey, John. Yeah, it's Jeremy Miner with XYZ company. Hey, listen, do you have how you doing today? I'm good. What's this all about? Hey, do you have 2 minutes? If I get to take 2 minutes of your time, like I said, I'm with XYZ company. And the reason why I called you today was click, not interested. I'm too busy. It's the same predictable. Hi, my name is, I'm with XYZ company. And the reason why I called you is, and then the prospect goes into what? Fight or flight mode, because they're used to every single salesperson going into their pitch. Or they'll be like, well, hey, what's this all about? Like, I don't have much time. Sir, if you just could give me 2 minutes of your time, I promise you that we can. It's the same thing. You literally could be calling from publishers sweepstakes, whatever it's called. And you could be saying, hey, you've won $100 million. You just need to sign here and we're going to send you a check for $100 million. And they would still try to get rid of you because they're not listening to anything you say because you've triggered fight or flight mode. So we want to come in sounding completely different. First of all, we want to tone down our enthusiasm. It is a myth when sales trainers say, if you sound really excited about your product, people are going to get excited. There is no data to support that. In fact, the data shows exactly the opposite. The more excited you are externally, now you got to be excited about what you sell, but keep that to yourself. Keep it internal, okay? Come across more neutral, more relaxed, more collective. Think about going into, and we train a lot of used car dealerships, so there's no pun intended, but think about when you go into car dealerships and the salesperson's really, really excited that you're there. How do you typically respond? You throw up the wall. Oh, just looking. No, we're just looking, right? You just throw up the wall, okay? Mm-hmm. So we want to calm down. We want to relax. And we want to come up with what we call a problem statement. We want to be able to identify a problem or two that any prospect we're calling can identify with, which triggers their brain to become curious enough to want to have a two-way conversation. And the problem statement, it's not meant to sell them. It's just meant to get them curious enough to engage back instead of going into fight or flight mode. It's all about disarming the prospect. And I'll give you a couple of examples here, but we follow the ABDs of selling. Always be disarming, not the ABCs, not always be closing. That's just going to trigger more sales. We want to always disarm from the first part of that conversation to the middle, to the end, to the close, to whatever sales process you're in, B2C, B2B. We're always asking the right questions that continually disarm the prospect to let their guard down and to keep their guard down and tell us the truth of what's really going on. Because if we know the truth, very easy to sell. If they're hiding stuff, it's really, really hard to sell, really hard to close, okay? So in a problem statement, we're going to start off with, they're going to be like, this is Wanda with XYZ company. Let's say that you have the number of the business owner. Let's just say you're calling a small company. We're not, enterprise is a little bit different. There's a few tweaks we would do, okay? This is Wanda with XYZ company. How can I help you? Hey, Wanda, it's just Jeremy Miner. I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. So you almost act confused. Okay. I call it the confused old man, confused old woman, I guess, right? Because if you go into a gas station, let's say an elderly person goes to the gas station, they're lost. What does everybody want to do? They want to help, right? It's just our human nature. Okay. You can't be like, I was wondering if you could help me out a moment first. You got to have the right tone. It's just, Jeremy, I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. Yeah, sure. How can I help you? What's this all about? Well, and I'm not quite sure if you're the right person I should be calling. I called to see if your company would be open to looking at any possible hidden gaps in your blank that could be causing you to blank. Okay. Now, depending on what you sell, you fill in the blanks. I was calling to see if your company would be open to any hidden gaps in your merchant processing that could be causing you to overpay every month. Now, what does that do? Hold on. What do you mean by overpay? Or who is this again? Or what's this all about? See, that's what I want. I want to trigger engagement. That's what the problem statement does. Okay. Does that make sense? That's how you start off a cold call. Then you go into personalized intro, situation questions, but that triggers them to become curious enough. Hold on. What do you mean by hidden gaps? Okay. I gave you an example of like, if you sell merchant processing, for example. Now it's going to be different in every industry depending on what you sell. Are you with me?
I am absolutely with you. And I'm loving it. So what are some of the stumbling blocks that somebody might be having other than, of course, they're not doing any sales? That would be a bad thing. But what are some of the stumbling blocks that typically people have? And they're like, oh my God, Jeremy, we need you so badly.
In what way? Are you talking about like a business owner, like marketing?
A business owner, sales manager. When did they kind of start to look out and go, we need to bring you in?
Well, I mean, we do 150 different reels a month on IG and Facebook, and we LinkedIn now and stuff. So we get calls left and right. I think, especially during times of economic contraction, which it looks like we're going into. We probably have been going into it for a while, but usually nobody knows. Like everybody kind of knows, but it doesn't come out. The truth doesn't come out for 3 or 4 months later. They're like, oh, there's a recession. Magically, it probably happened 3 or 4 months before that, but nobody wanted to say that, right? Okay. So during times of economic contraction, every shortfall that your salespeople have, every weakness that your salespeople have will only be magnified by 10 because companies and prospects they are calling upon do what? They start to hold on to their money even more. Okay. So every weakness, every shortcoming they have is only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. So even during these times, we get even more calls because companies understand that the lifeblood of their business is what? Sales. They can have the best operations, they can have the best financial part, the best P&Ls, but if they don't have sales coming in, none of that matters. None of it matters because nobody can be paid. So they understand that, hey, we need to get them better, more advanced skills because people are tied up. There's not as many laydowns. Let's just be real right there. So even during times of economic where it's booming, okay, people are always, they get to a certain level, but then they get stuck. Let's say they get to this level as a company. Well, how do they scale to this level? By their salespeople saying the same things, by the salespeople asking the same questions that's gotten them here. It's really impossible to get here. Okay. So a question we always ask even companies that are doing well, even like Google, it's like, hey, you've reached these big milestones in your company, but where are you guys wanting to go from? And we do analogy. Where are you guys wanting? You've reached these big milestones and goals as a company, but where are you guys wanting to go from here in terms of future improvement for your salespeople so they sell more for you? And so that gets them to think like, oh, we've reached here, but we really want to be up here. So it gets people thinking differently. That's what NEPQ stands for, neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. It gets your prospects to think through why they allow their problems to keep happening. Because here's one thing I think I mentioned this too on your last show, is that most of your prospects, when you first start talking to them, don't even realize they have a problem. Or maybe they realize they have a problem, but they don't know how bad that problem really is. And especially most of them don't understand the consequences of what will happen if they don't do anything about solving the problem. So when you learn advanced questioning, especially the right delivery of those questions, because it's one thing to ask a question, but it's how you're asking it, the tonality that sets you apart, okay? That causes the prospect not to see that they just have one problem, but maybe now that they see that they have 2 or 3 or 4 of their problems that they didn't realize they had. And when you're able to help them see that, not by telling them that, because that's going to go in one ear out the other. You're biased, you're the salesperson, but by your questioning allows them to tell themselves that, they start to view you as the expert, as the trusted authority who can get them where they want to be. So it's all about problem finding, problem solving. It's not about product pushing. So companies, I mean, you'll be surprised. We have companies that come to us that are already doing, $1 billion, and we'll have other companies that are just, they're going bankrupt. It's kind of all over the place.
Awesome. So I know our listeners are going to want to hear more from you. How did they start their journey with you?
Yeah, sure. If they ever want to get some resources, like even free resources from us, if they want to learn how to sell more, whatever their products and services are, best place for them to go to is just one of our Facebook groups. Let's send them to salesrevolution.pro. So if you've got the link there, you just go to www.salesrevolution. So salesrevolution.pro. And right when they join, go ahead, make sure you guys check your messages on Facebook Messengers, because somebody on my team will send you a free training called the NEPQ 101 mini course. It's with my CEO, Matt Ryder. And Matt will break down the NEPQ process for you. He's going to give you different example questions you can use for what you sell right now, so you can go out and sell more. And we go live in that group about 3 to 4 times a week with different trainings, different Q&A. So they're welcome to join that. I think we got 22 or 23,000 people in that group who are just salespeople and business owners like they are.
I love it. Jeremy, you have been absolutely amazing as always. Real quick, at what point in life did you know that you were a special kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
I just kind of fell into it. I retired. So I had a 17-year sales career, did pretty well financially. And I retired, 2017? Yeah, 2016, 2017. When I say I retired, I just kind of took a year off because I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I'll, get into more real estate. Maybe I'll just hang out for a couple of years. I kind of semi-retired. Let's just put it that way, because I'm still pretty young, you know. And then I started seeing all these ads on Facebook and IG from these sales gurus, and they would say like, "Oh, you got to do this, and you got to, you know, you got to use your hustle muscle, and you got to like throw out this rebuttal." And I'm like, man, if I sold that way in my career, I would have made 10% of what I actually made. Like, that does not work. Like, we are not in 1985. This is, you know, 2017 at the time that I was saying this. I'm like, man, there's so many people that are buying into this and they're not getting results. I guarantee it, because I was in the trenches. There's no way I could have got results using that. I would have been broke. And so it really fired me up. And I locked myself in my man cave for about 6 months at my house. And I wrote out our first training program in that 6 months and filmed it. And I thought I was just going to do a webinar one time to get these people, and I discounted really low. And we had like thousands of people that bought it. And I'm like, whoa. And then they started sending in all these testimonials like 3, 4, 5 weeks later. And everybody's like, man, you got to start your own sales training company. Like, please, for the love of God. And I'm like, maybe I should start a sales training company. And here we are, you know. And it was crazy, you know, as far as an entrepreneur, because we really started in almost 2018. And for the first year and a half, you know, it was just me, my assistant, and like a part-time salesperson, basically. And we did 7 figures, like low 7 figures in sales. But I didn't know how to run a business. Like, I've never been a CEO. You know, I was just a sales professional, right? In my career and stuff. And so in 2020, one of my clients, I had trained his company, his gyms, he had actually done so well that he was able to sell his gyms for a lot of money over in Australia. And I helped him persuade himself that he should be my business partner and CEO of the company, because he was so good at running business. I'm like, wow, I need this guy. And so I brought him over, and then we just went like, boom, like we went to 8 figures the next year. It was crazy. And then, you know, we won the award from the Inc. 5000 list last year. We were ranked the #1 fastest growing sales training company in the United States last year. But that's because I'm not the CEO. I'm just the chairman. I'm over all of our content, all of our training, all of our fulfillment. And that's what I do best. And as a business owner, if you're listening, hire people or bring people in that are really experts at what they do, and focus on where your expertise is if you really want to scale as a company. Now, I realize in the first year, sometimes that's, you know, you got to kind of just be the jack of all trades. But if you really want to scale from 6 figures to 7 figures, or 7 to 8, or 8 to 9, which we're working on now, you have to have the right team in place that are really skilled at certain parts of the business that you're not skilled in. And that sometimes that takes a while, right, Michelle, as you know.
Absolutely.
You got to get the right marketing people, the right chief marketing officer, the right, you know, sales people, the right operations people, all that kind of stuff. And we're doing much better on that than we were even a couple of years ago. So things can change very quickly once you bring in the right team. You can have the greatest product in the world, greatest service in the world, but if you don't have the right team, it's just not going to go anywhere. It's going to take a long time. You get the right team, you can scale pretty quick.
I love it. I love it. And congratulations on your awards. That's fantastic. You have been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it immensely. Any last words for our peeps?
Well, I would say, you know, the last words would be, you know, if you really think about what selling is about change. So it's about how good you are at getting your prospects to view in their mind that by changing their situation, that means purchasing your product or service, that by them doing that, that is far less risky for them than them doing nothing at all, staying in the status quo. Their problems stay the same and nothing ever changes. So once you get your salespeople to get so good at their questioning skills and tonality, the prospects start to view that it's way less risky for them to purchase what you're offering and get results than them doing nothing at all. And that's when selling becomes really, really fun. You get to help a lot of people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jerry.
Michelle, it's been an honor. Thank you. Have you ever seen that show on Netflix, Ozark with Jason Bateman?
Yep.
That's where I have my lake house here. That's where I'm traveling at.
Nice.
So I am here. I'm gonna go out a little bit later today if it stops raining and get on the jet skis. But it's been raining cats and dogs here. But lots of fun.
Well, I'm glad it's only a movie.
I know, right? It could be true. Some of that could be true. Not denying it.
But enjoy the water skiing. That's fantastic.
Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Peeps, this is Michelle Nedelec, your mistress in business. Thank you for being here today. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app so that I can continue to help you get it up and keep it up when you need me, because we love having you here. Thank you for listening to the Little Blue Pill for Business podcast with your mistress in business, Michelle Nedelec. Why are you still here? Go to littlebluepillforbusiness.com and get your goodies. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to share it with somebody else that you know would enjoy getting it up in business after you subscribe to the podcast, of course, so you won't miss any future episodes. Now, check the notes for links. Oh, and only tell your wife if she's into this, entrepreneurship. And I'll see you both on the other side.
Never left a match. They are doing wrong. You can do